Button. Whoa. Okay, welcome all. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Placer County Parks Commission at the Dry Creek Elementary School, September 21, 5:30, 2023. Let's start off with the flag salute. I pledge allegiance. Okay, so would the commissioners please recite your name and the fact that
Jeremy McCullum, present.
Ann Carpenter, present.
Jim Ricker, present.
John Bergman present.
Richard Kapp, present.
Verge Anderson, present.
David Tooker, present.
We have a full commission coming. And motion to approve the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda from last month.
And for this one.
Oh, meeting minutes or agenda?
Yeah, we're going to approve this month's agenda, this meeting's agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, agenda is approved. Approval of meeting minutes for July 2023. Can we have a motion?
I move that we approve the minutes of July 20th, 2023, as presented.
I'll second.
And we have a second by Dave, or Virgil?
Verge.
Okay, sorry. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Bergman was absent, so he abstains. Okay, public comment during this time. The public may address the commission on items not on the agenda. Public comment is limited to 15 minutes, so please limit your comments to 3 minutes per person. If all comments cannot be heard within the 15-minute time limit, the public comment period will be taken up at the end of the regular meeting. The commission is not permitted to take any action on items addressed under this item. Do we have any public comment on the floor? Do we have any public remotely? Hearing none, we need a motion. Well, we don't need a motion. We'll just blow through public comment. Thank you very much. Item 6, report from the Director Administrator to discuss the Board of Supervisors' action and progress on items heard by the Park Commission, upcoming events, future agenda scheduling, staffing, fiscal, and operational issues of the Parks Division. So,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Andy Fisher, Parks Administrator. Lots to talk about. There is a lot going on. We are busy. We have kind of come out of planning mode, as you saw today, and we're starting to get a lot done on the ground, and really just the beginning. But a few things I wanted to highlight that are happening. Our Barton Road Trail, Ted has been working on to connect Roseville Parkway to Eureka Road and then up to Douglas Boulevard. I've been working on it the last couple of years, and the last piece of that component, which was to get around a culvert. Ted worked with the road department to widen that out, so now we've got full connectivity along Barton Road from Douglas down to Roseville Parkway, so we're excited to have that project done. That was one of our capital improvement Tier 1 priorities, so good to see that one checked off. We also, I think as we reported at our meeting up in Tahoe, we were awarded earlier this year just under $650,000 by the California Tahoe Conservancy to perform fuels treatment, vegetation management, which is the removal of undergrowth, dead and dying trees, multi-trunk trees, and some of the overgrown canopy within each of our properties in the Tahoe area. And Casey Lyons, our senior supervisor managing that grant, was just able to get a really good bid on the first series of properties. We put them out in series that are biddable and packageable for the size companies we're dealing with. Got a really good price on the first one. So that'll take care of property around our Burton Creek Sheriff's Substation and courts up in Tahoe, as well as some of the other properties that we've been getting a lot of calls for. So properties that are in the middle of neighborhoods, near and dear to people, given concerns to people. So we're excited to have that work done this year before the snow flies, and we'll be working on that into next year. So getting that work done on the ground is fulfilling. We're really happy to see that done. We also wanted to give you an update on what's going on at Hidden Falls on the new Twilight Ride parking area is under construction. Lisa has been working diligently on that project. She was out there earlier today, making good progress, getting a lot of the underground work done, working on the driveway entrance. Their hope this year is to get maybe to get it paved out, where they could come in next construction season, do the bathroom, the amenities, all the fencing, the things that go with that. But we got a good company so far. They've been good to work with, called All Phase Construction out of Citrus Heights. Actually, one of the foremen on the job was the same foreman that built the original parking lot for Hidden Falls. So it's good to have him back. He did a good job then. So that's under construction. That is a great relief. I think we reported last time we had to make up a $1.6 million deficit when we got the bid. We believe we got good bids, but they are higher. They were uniformly higher than the engineer's estimate. And we went to the Board of Supervisors. We had a recommendation of drawing park fees from the two areas 5 and 6 that are adjacent to Hidden Falls. The board elected to backfill that entire 1.6 with general fund. So we have preserved money in those park fee accounts, and that's how the board elected to fund it. So excited about that. We have issued a cattle lease to Auburn Ravine Grazers, a local grazing, very well reputable grazing contractor. Lisa also was on the review committee that selected them to graze all of 1,200 acres of Hidden Falls that's open today. That contract has been let, and we just had to do some finishing touches on fencing to keep cattle in, and they'll be moving in just in time for the rains this fall and for the cattle to, for the grass to start growing again. So happy to have them on the project. We'll be getting some revenue. Instead of just paying for goats, we'll be getting some revenue back from the cattle grazing and contributing to the agricultural economy of the county is a big deal to us as well. Next, another big initiative for us is the Asset Works program, is a software program to help us design a capital replacement program. So it's an inventory management software program, capital replacement. Our guys, Dan and several of his folks, Matt, have been in training, intense training, the last couple days on getting familiar with that software. A lot of the inventory data itself has been uploaded. We just now need to sit down and get some of the costs, the associated costs loaded, so we can start bringing forth a model to the CEO's office and to the board of what we realistically need going forward to fund a capital replacement and major maintenance program. That really is the one part of our maintenance that has been, underfunded and underthought about for years. Facility Services went through a similar exercise 4 or 5 years ago. It's time for us to come forward. The board has a lot of placing a high priority right now in maintaining what we have. So there is an initiative and an appetite to hear what it's going to take to maintain things going forward. We did build in funding in some of our new projects, like you saw today, Riola Vineyards, the 2 new parks that you looked at today. Those projects have built-in money to the property taxes that will help pay for some of that major maintenance in addition to the daily and weekly maintenance. But some of our older parks don't. So we'll be approaching the board and saying, we've now got some good data-backed analysis on what it's going to cost to maintain our inventory over time, including things like asphalt, bridges, artificial turf, high-dollar items. So we're very excited about that and hope to be able to make that whole software program come into conjunction with next year's budget cycle, which starts around January. So we'll be doing a more intense update to your commission on the results of that software program and analysis as soon as we get the data kicked out. And then finally, I wanted to explain what I was up to today, why I was not here for the tour earlier. We had a meeting with the California Tahoe Conservancy. They toured North Tahoe. If you're not familiar with the California Tahoe Conservancy, they are a state agency. A large part of what they do is provide grant funding and support for their initiatives, which are sustainability, climate issues, recreation, alternative transportation, things like that within the Tahoe Basin. They have a sister organization called the Sierra Nevada Conservancy that has supported similar things in the western part of the county and given us grant funding for things like agricultural fencing and agricultural upgrades at Hidden Falls, things like that. The Tahoe Conservancy works in Tahoe. They are interested in the trail system in Tahoe, and so we were able to talk to them about what the long-term vision of our paved trail system is in Tahoe, and just wanted to briefly go through that. On the back side of the page, you have a map. There are really two great loop trails, asphalt loop trails, that have been worked on since the 1970s in the Tahoe area. The one of them you can't see all of because it goes all the way around Lake Tahoe. We call that the Tahoe Bikeway. You can see the darker blue sections of trail are sections of paved trail that have already been built, and then the dash sections are sections that we're still working on. The Tahoe City Public Utility District really took kind of a pioneering role in this vision of a bikeway around Lake Tahoe. And then the second loop of that great vision is what we call the Resort Triangle. That's what you see kind of central to the page, just to the right, and that's the loop trail that connects all of the North Tahoe communities: Truckee, Martis Valley, North Star, Kings Beach, Tahoe Vista, Tahoe City, Olympic Valley, and Alpine Meadows. And so both of those together, when it's complete, will allow anybody, virtually anybody in the Tahoe, North Tahoe area to get, to walk out their front door and be able to get on a bike and get to anywhere in the Tahoe Basin, the Truckee area. So it's taken on, I think it began life as more of a recreational vision. It's really taken on life now as an alternative transportation vision. The Tahoe City Utility District does polling and surveys on their portion of the trail, that dark blue portion that's already built. They measure up to 1,800 users per day on sections of that trail. Heavily used trail, one of the most heavily used trails in the state. And if I can remember my notes, 30% of the people that they poll say that they are using that trail now for transportation, not just recreation, either to shopping or to work. And almost 50% have reported that they would use their car if the trail wasn't there. So it really genuinely is a multi-use trail, and as soon as we've been able to build on sections, the county worked with North Star Community Service District on the Martis Valley Trail. Ted's working on the next sections of that right now. And so that we were able to build. I think some of you were at the ribbon cutting when we completed the segment from the town of Truckee up to North Star Drive just last year, continuing hopefully to get funded and get up to North Star Village. That'll be the next section. Our Public Works Department is working to complete the section from Dollar Creek Trail that we built a couple of years ago up to that. You can see the hub of the green and yellow trails there is at North Tahoe Regional Park. And they're working on the sections in between Dollar Creek and North Tahoe Regional Park. They're also working on the Truckee River corridor along the Truckee River. So all said, to complete that vision will take, we believe, given the comps of recent construction, probably between $100 and $150 million. So it's no small feat. But it's not so much pie in the sky either, because we built 28 of the 66 miles already that trail system will be. So piece by piece, logical connection by logical connection, highest priority ticked off, and then to the next one. We've been able to do it, but we do want to build as much momentum as we can. Tahoe Conservancy is a key organization and a key partner, both funding partner and legislative advocate, and we wanted to get that message out to them of what that full vision was. And then once it's built, it's also a very significant thing to maintain. We've got comps of what it costs to maintain today, and so generally, on average, it's about $5,000 per mile per year, just to sweep it, clean it, take care of the trailhead amenities along the trail. But the big ticket is saving enough money for major maintenance, asphalt maintenance, especially in the high country when you get the freeze-thaw effect of cracking, and the asphalt breaks down much quicker in the high country than it does here. So we know that it takes about $15,000 per year set aside per mile to maintain that trail. And also plowing is becoming very popular. Tahoe City PUD is plowing most of that blue section. We've got enough demand that we're going to start plowing the Martis Valley Trail this year. They also, but that costs about $7,500 per mile per year in addition to all that. So you add it all together, and you got about $28,000 per mile per year. So we also need to identify some good, solid, ongoing costs, revenue stream to maintain that. That message, I think, was received very well by the CTC committee. It is really the kind of thing that they prioritize and they want to help with, and so off we are on to the next phases. So last but not least at all, I believe Sean was not able to be at our meeting last time. We did introduce Sean and let you know that Sean Johnson is our new associate planner, but now Sean is here in the flesh, and so we'd like to just, now that you can see him, Sean has really dove right into his work, taken on a lot of the land use conditioning and inspecting and things like that, also working on some other projects, our website. We've kind of immersed him in everything we possibly can until he gets so busy with land use that he has no more time. But he's been working on our website, working on some of our Tahoe Beach issues, things like that. So we really appreciate having Sean. He came from our community development agency downstairs, so he's very familiar with our regulatory process and our community development agency. So he's just a natural fit. We're happy to have Sean. That's all I had.
Do we have any questions for Andy? No? Andy, I got a couple questions. That software you mentioned for infrastructure analysis and status, is that the same software that you said facilities is using?
It's the same software that Fleet
Or
uses.
fleet uses?
Yeah. Facility uses a software program that also does a lot of managing their day-to-day tasks, and we really didn't want that. We wanted a budget modeling
Right.
product that would give us a capital improvement program. We really weren't interested in a work order program, and that's what facility uses.
Gotcha. So the introduction of that, is it all up to your staff to figure it out, or is the software provider going to be critical in helping things get rolling?
I'm going to turn to Dan for that one, because he is our genuine resident expert. Dan and Matt. Matt is our project manager. Dan's closer to the microphone, so I'll let him decide which one. But let me give it to both of those guys to answer the details on that one.
So it's a combination of both, right? We had the vendor down the last 2 days, well, actually, he's been down all week. We worked with him, Matt and I worked with him on Monday and Tuesday, got some training in, not just entering assets into this database, but also grading them, putting a dollar value to them, a replacement cost, a maintenance cost, all those sort of things. So ideally, once they're gone, which he'll be leaving today or tomorrow, we will be going back and having some interns do some field work, entering some of the, measuring the asphalt. A lot of the smaller assets are in it. Ironically, it kind of went backwards when we were starting to work on it because we were trying to figure out what we wanted in the system. So right now we're down to, parking lots, structures such as restrooms, snack bars, things like that, that are kind of, that infrastructure part of the park itself. And once we get those in, I think we'll see a better kind of a flat line of where we're at as far as what needs to be replaced, when it needs to be replaced. A lot of what we're seeing is that we're going to need a fairly significant upfront cost to bring us up because we stopped our preventative maintenance plans in 2008 when, the economy took a dive and we started losing staff. So I think we're going to need a fairly significant upfront ask from the board, and then the goal is to, flatline that out for major maintenance to where we can determine where it needs to go most.
So when you're entering the assets into the program, at the same time, you're also entering the status of its depreciation?
Yeah, that's kind of the idea is we're doing a life cycle of the asset, right? So you take a picnic table, for example, you anticipate this is gonna last 10 years, and you have 183 picnic tables, and the idea, right, is to kind of flatten that curve to where you're replacing them, 10% of them every 10 years. And so that's kind of the data we're looking to get is what's it gonna cost, what's it gonna take, as we have staff that have limited restrictions in the field, things that they can do, those are good assignments for them, right? If somebody has an injury and they have limited duty, those are the kind of, we utilize them to help bring us that data back that we have an intern who's working in the software right now, so.
Go out, eyeball the parking lot, recognize that a third of the parking lots, have had snow
Exactly.
damage or something,
Exactly.
and go, okay, this thing,
Yeah.
I got 2 years left on this.
Right.
And
And that's kind of that, teaching somebody how to recognize, the asset and where it's at in its life cycle. For some of us, it's fairly easy because we've been doing it so long, but as the supervisors go out and do their field inspections, they're also bringing some of that data back. That's kind of that process.
And as they put new assets in, like reinstall new picnic tables and stuff like that. Like, yeah, then we have those in, new fences, new picnic tables, whatever. You add that in as new, that location.
Gotcha, so like those properties we saw today, you've got certain, like you say, there's some picnic tables, there's some bathrooms, there's a bunch of playground equipment, there's landscaping, there's groundwork. You gotta itemize all that stuff, pop it in there as, here's day one, here's anticipated life, and then down the road, as you build this database, you'll get hip to what cooks with, okay, we need 84 picnic tables.
Yeah. And that's part of one of the exercise for the guys that are working in the software is, now that we've taken that park on, is they're gonna be able to go out there within the next week or so and see what it takes to document an entire park, right?
Right.
Front to end. And that will help a lot, and then we'll have current data. I mean, we have some parks that were built in the 80s and even older, so it takes more of an experienced eye to look at it and go, yeah, that's probably only got 3 years left, and maybe that one's got 5 years left. And so that's where a little bit of the troubleshooting comes in, right, is that assessing the current condition of the existing inventory. We've actually got a lot of the front-loaded data done, so it's fortunate, and I have a lot of background in the park, so I know when they were all built, I know when they were installed, so I know a lot of, because I've been a part of the replacement program for so many years, a lot of it's just sitting down and plugging it into a spreadsheet, and then they dump it all into the software.
So it sounds like you need to be listed as an asset that's got 32 years life in it so far, okay.
So, yeah. So hopefully we'll have some data, maybe the next commission meeting, we can actually bring you some data.
Okay, Andy, I got a quick question in regards to California CTC.
Yes.
And did they talk about their ability to fund and whether it's restricted to capital or capital and maintenance, or where, can you give us a little lowdown on what kind of potential money they can cough up?
Yeah, I mean, in our presentation today, it was really a one-way, it was a monologue. There really was not a two-way discussion. It was a presentation. But what I believe I know, at least from experience, they tend to be funders of capital. I haven't known them to be funders of ongoing revenue. Yeah, right, yeah.
It depends on the funding source.
Okay.
So a lot of the money that underwrites CPC and the programs comes from previous bonds, statewide bonds that have been approved, and bond dollars can be used exclusively for capital.
Do they administer any federal money or no?
That would come through TRPA, Water Regional Planning Agency, but they work in coordination with CPC.
Okay. All right, do we have any more questions for Andy in regards to his report? Okay, well, we'll jump to the item 7, park dedication fee. Dedication fund analysis report, and I noticed that Andy made some modifications to actual revenue, potential revenue for each fund. And would you like to give us a little lowdown on that?
Certainly. So you have one park fee report in your packet that's the simple report you're used to seeing. And then Dina, at the request of our chair, Dina and I, mostly Dina, have been working on some different ways to try to make a quick visual snapshot of how fast these park fee areas are replenishing. So the question came up, in some of these districts, if we were to give away 50% of it, how do we get it back that, next year, or does it take 20 years? And so this was the kind of the next rendition. We wanted to get your feedback on it. And this was just to show the amount of revenue that came in annually, not how much was in there on that date, but how much came in during that year. So we put 4 columns in there, we, meaning Dina, for 1920, 2021, 21-22, 22-23. So as you contemplate, as you will be later this evening, the recommendation on use of those fees, you would be able to see the pace at which these fees are regenerating within each area. Also, a couple other things I wanted to draw your attention to on this report were areas 13 and 14. Area 14 will be the subject of the action item tonight that Ted will be presenting. So we're going to, you can see that we have $209,000 roughly in our Bear River Applegate area, and we'll be requesting use of most of those funds tonight you'll be hearing about. And then the Dry Creek, this area that we're in, Area 13, Dry Creek, West Placer, you'll see the balance of $2.435 million. That jumped $429,000 this month because of the reimbursement from the state from a program that we've told you about in the past called the SKIP program. So subdivisions had an option. This is coming out of the recession when they're trying to find capital for development. The state sponsored a bond program where a developer could defer the payment of fees to a 30-year payback from the residents and enter into this bond where we could get a one-time in lieu check or a reimbursement rather for the amount of fees that were due by that development. So this was a development right off of PFE Road, very close to here. It's $430,000. The trick, that was our learning experience. We've not entered into an agreement like that since. And the reason why it is reimbursable, and you have to guarantee entering into that agreement that you're able to spend those fees within, I believe, 4 years. So it's a great thing if you've got a shovel-ready project that you're very confident in. But if you don't, it can put you in a pickle. So Ted worked very hard over the last 2 or 3 years. We used those fees to put shade covers over the playgrounds, put the exercise equipment that in Dry Creek Park and along the trail. We completed a section of trail that was not included in the bridge project. And was there one other thing that we did?
Yeah, the clover leaf on the bridge project.
Yep.
And security cameras at Dry Creek Park.
So we were able to do some very necessary things, but Ted really had to scramble to get it done in that time frame. And then one of our analysts, Gina, just took over in our CEO's office and really diligently reached out to the state and got that money back. So we've secured it. It was a success, but it was a little bit of a nail biter there for a while.
Are there any more anticipated potential SKIP fund reimbursements?
The program's been replaced by another program called BOLD. I'm not sure exactly what the differences are. And I think, each time that the treasurer or tax collector's office is approached by a developer, they ask us. It is voluntary on the part of the county. And it will just depend on how confident we are that we have a project that needs money and needs it within that time frame, whether we would agree to enter into it.
Any more questions in regards to the park dedication fee?
Andy, on these funds as they come in, is there any type of time requirement that they have to be used?
Indeed. The funds are required to be allocated to a project within 5 years of receipt, and we do track that.
Okay.
Some of these are getting close, and that's part of the reason we're talking to you tonight about the use of some of these fees. We do know some of the projects that we have in mind for this. The completion of Dry Creek Park would use up quite a bit of the Area 13 fees, for example. But we do need to get those fees appropriated timely, and we do track it.
And then what happens to those fees if they don't get used within the time or allocated within that time period?
That's a good question. I'll need to go back and read the statute.
Okay.
Refunded to the
Is that what it
developer
is?
if they request.
That's what I would think. That's what I think. And then I have a kind of a follow-up question to that is, there's a current balance of $9 million here. is that sitting in any kind of account that gains interest, or is that allowed to be done?
It does gain interest, yes.
Okay.
Mhm. And that's why a lot of those numbers are not very round numbers. It's the interest really that gives you the odd cents and dollars at the end.
So we're good with the park dedication fee program. We'll jump to informational items. Grants and capital funding, we have a company, Doug Houston, thank you for showing up.
I know I had a moment to introduce Doug earlier before the program, but I would like to just introduce Doug for the record. Doug is a legislative analyst who does grant consultation work for us, and we've had a long relationship with Doug, beginning with funding for the North Fork Trail project that ultimately was stalled, but Doug was able to get us over $1 million for that project. He was responsible for a large part of the funding of the existing Hidden Falls, influential in the grants that we've received for the projects underway right now. Doug was a Parks Commissioner under, which district did you represent when you were Park Commissioner?
Was 3?
District
The time?
3?
It was, well, the lines have changed since it was Harriet's at that time.
Okay.
So I think it was 3 at the time.
So, as a
Pardon? No, Harriet
Harriet White.
White. Supervisor White.
Just saw Harriet White at the board the other day, so she's looking good. So anyway, I just wanted to reintroduce Doug and turn it over to Doug for an opportunity to talk to us about what's on the grant horizon coming up in the next couple of years.
Very good. And how many of you would prefer to be watching the Niner game than listening to me tonight? I know you would. And how many think that Andy should be subject to some sort of disciplinary action for scheduling it on a night of a Niner? Right here.
Mandatory retirement.
Anyways, it's funny, Andy invoked the whole North Fork Trail as sort of the genesis of my relationship with the county, but it actually predated that, and I don't even know if Andy knows this. But my first foray in working with the county was extremely contentious. I've worked on a number of bonds, park bonds and climate bonds over the course of the last couple decades. The first one I really dug into was called Proposition 12, dated back to year 2000, 2001. It's approved by the voters, $2.1 million. Included in the bond, which I had included, was $2 million for common speech in Tahoe City. I did it on behalf of one of your current supervisors, who at the time was the assistant general manager, and Cindy Gustafson. She had asked that I do this. And lo and behold, I think your facilities director at the time thought that the money was to be available to the county. That, if you're not, are you familiar with common speech right there in Tahoe City? That property was actually dedicated to the people of Tahoe City by Ulysses S. Grant in 1870. So we went round and round, Tahoe City PUD and the county went round and round to try to determine who was going to take the lead on it. It was really contentious. Ultimately, the county deferred and Tahoe City was the lead, and Cindy worked on that. But it was a terrific project. But fast forwarding, and I think Andy did mention it, I was also the lead advocate on Proposition 68. That was a $4.1 billion park and resources bond. You got some money in through per capita. It wasn't a lot, maybe about $1 million, perhaps.
650,000, yeah.
Oh, that wasn't very much. But in addition to that, one of the programs I designed and included into the bond was what's called the Trails and Greenways program. And it was very intentional in design because I wanted to make sure that the county was eligible and could be competitive for more trails funding leading into the expansion of Hidden Falls. And as a result, I think you got, Lisa, 3 point something? Yeah. $3.1 million to kick things off at Twilight Ride, and wasn't enough, but I'm glad that the county stepped in and the board stepped in and is backfilling a lot of that in general fund. In addition to Placer County, I consult with the legislature on behalf of East Bay Regional Park District. It's the largest in the continental U.S. Counties of Los Angeles, Sonoma, Marin. I represent what's called the Sierra Consortium. It's actually it's an advocacy group that works to help to underwrite the Sierra Nevada Conservancy and the Tahoe Conservancy. And I also represent sort of the business private sector arm of the outdoors in what's called the California Outdoor Recreation Partnerships, the California-based services, goods and services providers here in the state of California. So tonight, talk about what I was working on and have been working on over the course of the last several years. It's finally culminating in something, and it is, again, another bond. Earlier this year, in light of the fact that our revenue situation in California went from a $90 billion surplus to a $30 billion deficit, the governor, based on our surplus, Governor Newsom, had decided to allocate a lot of that surplus funds toward climate and toward resources to the tune of about $54 billion. Now that we aren't in the same situation that we were in, the governor announced that he wanted to work with the legislature to try to find ways to backfill some of the money that he had to take away from previous year expenditures. So I've been working on a bond. This bond is $15 to $16 billion. And did we have more information? Well, I can give you just sort of a breakdown of some of the goodies that are in this bond that I've been working on that would be important to the county. Again, I previously mentioned the per capita program. It's more money in the aggregate. I'm thinking it's going to be more in the order of about $1 million for the county, and that can be used at their discretion. Unlike other programs, there's money in there for regional park entities, and I'm using a term, equity destinations, and trying to direct some of the money, because a lot of the money that we're spending in California, they're trying to get into urban areas to address park deficiencies. So in this instance, we know that Placer County is neither really park deficient, and we really don't have disadvantaged populations. But what we do know is that in the case of, at least in Hidden Falls, a lot of the folks that show up on a regular basis and participate in using the parks are from lesser advantaged areas of the state. So what I'm trying to do with this program is to recognize the fact that there are these populations outside of the county that are using these facilities and are impacting these facilities. So trying to fund and underwrite projects that will help in that area. I've got money into the Sierra Nevada Conservancy. There's money for the CTC, the California Tahoe Conservancy. Trails and Greenways, again, the aforementioned Trails and Greenways program, there's money in there, a considerable amount. I'm trying to create a new Trails Conservancy, and then there's a new Office of Outdoor Recreation that we're trying to form in the state of California. We've tried through legislation to do that. We have $900 million for what's called the statewide park program. This program came out of what was Prop 84, and it is used and designed specifically to green up urban areas of the state. Placer County is not, I don't even know if Lisa, have you even tried to compete for these dollars before? It's tough, but recognizing that, again, Placer County, we're not park poor necessarily, and we don't have a lot of disadvantaged populations within the county. I've set aside a specific set of money that can be used for populations that are greater than 80% median household income. All the money to this point needs to go to populations that are less than 80%. So at least the county can apply for that small percentage, or the $125 million. There's a few other programs that the county is eligible for. Probably not terribly competitive, but at the end of the day, I think there's going to be some good opportunities. And then there's a second bond
that I'm less involved in, that is much more, it's less recreation and a little bit more conservation oriented. And so, again, we've got a couple different bonds moving through the legislature. We've got a commitment out of the governor for at least $10 billion, at least that's what it's been rumored for. And I'm hoping, with my involvement, working with the county, working with others, that there will be some money available at the end of the day. Slide. So again, I mentioned the budget because, again, we had a considerable surplus in previous year budgets. We were able to include funding, one-time funding for important programs. And the one that I worked on was the Trails and Greenways program. We had $35 million in the program. Last year, the governor eliminated it entirely. I worked with the legislature. We restored $10 million, so that's going to be a grand opportunity for the county moving forward. There's money for the urban greening program, and some of these reductions, again, the statewide park program, and then there's funding through the conservancies that would have been available on a competitive basis, the Sierra Nevada and the California Tahoe Conservancy for this department. But that will be, a lot of those monies will be shifted into the bond. So the grants and funding opportunities, at least, and I'm not sure this is all inclusive of the opportunities, and if Andy or Lisa, if you have any other thoughts that you want to share with your commissioners, please do. But again, there's some money for trails and greenways, money that's going to be available, a lot more money that's going to be available on an annual basis through what's called the Land and Water Conservation Fund. To this point, about 2 years ago, California was a recipient of maybe $3 million annually. And now it's, they fully funded it at the federal level, so it's going to be roughly $15 to $18 million annually for a pretty wide range of projects that the county can compete for through this funding program. Money through the Wildlife Conservation Board, which is more about acquiring land, but they do have a recreation and public access component, and we did apply for some funding earlier this year to try to, that gap funding associated with Hidden Falls. We were rejected, but there's going to be other opportunities moving forward. The WCB does have considerable money, so I think we need to build a better relationship with them going forward. Money through the Sierra Nevada Conservancy that they do still have budgeted, statewide park program, and then urban greening and forestry. So got a lot of opportunities, got a lot of money, and we're going to have a lot more money if we can advance a bond and get something on the ballot for November. So I think we're pretty well positioned to take advantage of some of this funding. Unless people have questions. Yeah, Ted.
I have a question for you, Doug. And this is my experience of dealing with some of the state Prop 68 grants. Specifically, the one I was working on was the Martis Valley Trail. And we weren't successful in the, was it the recreation?
It was probably Trails and Greenways program.
Yeah, and so what I noticed is these grant opportunities have a component of a median household income where you have to find it on the map, and of course in the Tahoe area that we're not going to meet that, but that trail is not for that area per se. It's a regional trail. It's a worldwide known trail, and it's used by everybody. And I was just wondering if the state considers, that kind of restriction on those grants, that it lessens the opportunity to be successful in that grant just because it's in an area that doesn't meet the median household income, but it's used by everybody of all incomes. That ever gets taken into consideration when they're writing for these?
Yeah, I don't know which program you were applying through, because I don't believe the Trails and Greenways program has that
It was a
component.
different one. It was Prop 68, or Prop 80.
Parks
Prop
and-
68, but it was, it was one of the different programs. Regional Rec and Tourism, I believe.
That's what it
Oh,
was.
there it is. That's the rural rec and tourism.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't have a good answer. I did mention that it's been acknowledged and recognized. You have to be mindful of the composition of the legislature, which is primarily rural. And, you have 30-plus assembly members that reside in LA, and
Right.
and equity is front and center with them and with the administration. And they believe there's been some historic underinvestment in a lot of communities. And that's the challenge that I'm finding.
Yeah.
And I did mention earlier through the regional program, we're trying to find a workaround through, people need to understand that we have these facilities that aren't in disadvantaged areas, but disadvantaged populations are using them.
Correct, yeah.
And, I do have it in that one program. Sonoma County asked me specifically to include that, and it's great that I think Placer County will be able to piggyback off that as well. But it's a challenge. I do my best to try to make everybody as happy as possible in the drafting of
And we
language.
absolutely
But
appreciate your efforts.
again, you need to look at the composition of the legislature, and not just with the legislature, with this administration, and equity is an important thing with this administration. So
Great.
I wish I had a better answer.
Would,
No.
One thing we could do to help bolster our position is to have some more data about who's using, for our previous one, we did have some anecdotal data.
Right.
But to have some more current data, like Candy's always asking as far as what an intern could do, that would be a great thing that they could do both up at, Martis Valley Trail and
Down
at
at Hidden Falls.
So, hey, what's your zip code when you're, do you mind giving me your zip code?
Yeah.
So that we can get this kind of data and include it within our applications, hey, like you're saying. And we tried to include some of that. But
Yeah, and I think, again, I think Sonoma County actually has developed some of those data sets, so they think they're in a good position to argue for funding.
But it is hard, like Ted's saying, when you get, on the point system, one of the questions is, and you gotta put your
I know.
circle in, and you don't make the cut there, you just lost 10 points.
Yeah.
And that's pretty.
It's called the Fact Finder program.
Yeah.
You identify where your project is, it's a half-mile radius around it. That brings in all the data that the state wants to see, which is what is the median household income and how much park space is within that half-mile radius.
And nowhere in Placer County are we gonna make that cut.
It's tough. You got anything going out in Sheridan?
we do actually, and we discovered with Fact Finder that most of the tiny little part of Sheridan, around Sheridan might be disadvantaged, but within a half mile, it's not. So, yeah, it's tough. Would that kind of data help you, Doug, when you're talking
With this county, for sure,
Okay.
and other counties. Yeah,
Thank you.
sure, yeah, of course.
That kind of data, would that mean figuring out who uses Hidden Falls now? How many of them come from Sacramento, essentially, and use that as an economic rationale, that we got people from Sacramento coming? Do you have to drill down and find out where they lived in Sacramento to determine whether they're deprived of park access, et cetera?
We actually have that from a reservation system. We know exactly where people live, at least on the weekends.
So you gotta get down to the brass tacks and go, and this guy lives in
Yeah,
a
'cause
lousy
it-
neighborhood,
right.
and 80% of them,
That's
whatever.
the challenge, because it's just not Sacramento County. You can't throw a 95814 zip code in.
Well,
It
I'm
needs
trying to
be
think of the
where-
most,
where,
the neediest neighborhood around
Right,
here is
exactly.
Sacramento. I wouldn't use the Martis Trail particularly. That market up there is economically privileged primarily.
With that said, I've been up there several times and ran into people, and they are from all walks of life, all over California, all over Nevada, Oregon, Washington. I've met people from
Everywhere.
Australia,
Sure,
all come there
sure.
because it's one of the most beautiful places
tough.
within.
But to Andy's point earlier about who's using the bike trails, a lot of people are using it to commute. Now, the wage structure up there is not that great for locals, so maybe it sort of qualifies. But to Doug's point, when you're dealing with legislature of California, where there's some heavy-duty problems, doesn't compare.
It's just an optics issue. I
Yeah.
mean, honestly, you can, and we could come up with tremendous data to demonstrate why some of these projects, you know, should be eligible and should be competitive. But I mean, Martis Valley, you know, the optics is going to be pretty challenging out there. They're going to be. Any other questions?
Do we have any more questions for Doug? Hearing none, thanks for showing up, Doug.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Okay.
All right. So as you recall, at our last meeting, you appointed Commissioner Cap to represent your commission on a solicitation for a consultant to help us update our park dedication fee program. And because of that, I thought it'd be a good opportunity. We've got some new commissioners. I haven't done a kind of what do I call a Park Fee 101 presentation for quite a while, just to refresh everyone on the park fee program we have today, the purpose of it, the legal setting of it, and then kind of prime everyone for some of the considerations that we'll be looking at with our new fee program update. So that's what this is. And before I get started, I just wanted to draw your attention. I know you got a lot of stuff that we handed out tonight, but a couple of the things that I'll refer to. One of them is a packet that says request for proposals. This is the draft that we are planning on sending out. Sean is our project manager. He's going to be working on this fee program, and Sean's been working on this. I'm going to be sending this out through our procurement services division, and this will be the solicitation that we use to draw proposals from consultants, financial consultants. Another thing I'll draw your attention to, again, we'll refer back to these. I just wanted to kind of have them handy. This next one is a list of all of the park fee projects that are funding, that our park fees have funded throughout the history of the program since 1979. And then finally, what we refer to as our HAZRAF report, or Placer County Park and Recreation Facility Impact Fee Study from 2003 by HAZRAF Economics Group. So this is the Nexus study. This was the last Nexus study that was done that undergirds the program we have today, done by HAZRAF. So the project that we're engaged in is to update this report. So you have this. Just go through some of the basics of our fee program. You know, what is the fee program for? Our general plan states that we strive as a county to maintain 5 acres of active parkland per 1,000 residents, 5 acres of passive parkland per 1,000 residents, and 1 mile of recreational trail per 1,000 residents. The intent of the fee program is to maintain that standard as new residents come in. And so that the economics behind that fee, at least in 2004 dollars and COLA adjusted up to today, reflect theoretically the cost of building 5 acres of active parks for 1,000, 5 acres of passive parks. Interestingly enough, there's no provision in there for the trail. In 2004, I think the expectation, we were really just starting to kind of get into trails and open space in a larger level back then. And I think the thought was that trail would be embedded in your open space somewhere and in your park. And that's not 20 years later, that's not necessarily true. So one of the things we want to look at is how those actually play out on the ground and what they cost today. By the way, the planning department is beginning an update of the general plan. So over the next, that usually is a 3 or 4 year process. So what we come up with here today, as well as the Park and Trail Master Plan information, will inform the new recreational element in the general plan. So we'll all be working on that together over the next several years. As most of you know, we collect the fees today in 16 different geographical benefit areas. There was never, if you look at the fee program itself, you go look in our code that enacts that fee program, you won't see any reference to those fee areas. They were adopted by my predecessors, John Ramirez and Vance Kimbrell, sat down with a map and drew out what they thought to be logical areas to help what is referred to in the law that you have to do, which is to be able to create a nexus between the payer of the fee and the beneficiary of the fee, projects that benefit the payers. And so they wanted to make sure at that time that, people in Tahoe weren't paying for projects in Roseville and vice versa. And so they came up with this map. This is a map that came much later. Back in the day, they drew it all out on the individual assessor's parcel maps. There was dozens and dozens of them. This is quite the trick to interpret. But we did eventually get this down onto a single map. We put it in our GIS database. In our minds, this has always been guidance. It has never been truly hard and fast, and we have used over the years fees from one area if we're confident that the payers would benefit from it. So, for example, we've drawn from a larger radius around Hidden Falls because it's a regional project. In most recent interpretation, though, our auditor's office, or assessor's office, auditor's office, and council have taken a much more conservative stance on their recommendations for our expenditure of these fees, and they've said that they need to be spent only within those areas, those boundaries, and cannot go outside of those boundaries. So that's the state we're in today, and so probably good timing that we're going to update this program, because I think that, it's not necessarily the intent. So we'll need to think about what kind of flexibility we want to build into the new program going forward. But this is the fee areas today. Those reflect the spreadsheet that you saw earlier in the park dedication fee report. The legal authority to enact these fees comes from really 3 different state provisions and 3 different county code provisions. So Government Code 66477 is referred to as the Quimby Act. It's related to the Subdivision Map Act, and it requires specifically a set-aside of park land from new development. The Quimby Act, being related to the Subdivision Map Act, generally means that we are interested in collecting funds or requiring the dedication of parkland at the time of lot creation. The AB 1600, the Mitigation Fee Act, can refer to just general assessments or fees, one-time fees paid for any type of municipal service or development. And those fees are collected at the time of building permit. The county is required to enact an ordinance or a portion of its code to enact those state provisions of law, and so the portion of the portion of our fee we collect under the Mitigation Fee Act is embedded in section 15.34 of the county code, and the portion related to the Quimby Act is embedded in 16.08. There are some discrepancies between those code sections. For example, they reference different indexes for the annual cost of living adjustment. There are different standards for what and how fee credit is available for those against those fees for providing on-site amenities. So if a developer builds a park on site, they get credit against these fees. There's some discrepancies there. And then there's another section of our code called our Plan Development Ordinance. It's another, and it refers to a type of, it's a zoning code that allows a plan development designation, which essentially says if you're zoned for a certain number of units, you can become entitled to a higher density and more flexibility in how you lay out your lots if you then dedicate more open space and more parkland and more park amenities. And so that requires, the Plan Development Ordinance requires essentially that if you are designated a planned development and you submit a subdivision map that is a planned development, that you then effectively doubles your obligation of providing park fees or on-site park amenities. So, and then I added that final bullet down there. The development agreement is a powerful tool for projects in West Placer. And it's a little hard to see, but the big green, the light green, biggest green chunk in the bottom left of the page is Placer Vineyards, our largest development that's just getting underway. The blue patch just to the right, the bottom right of that is Riolo Vineyards. Those are the parks that you just visited today. And then as you go further north, there's an intermixing of projects within the city of Roseville. The maroon-colored one is a county project, the regional university project, and then the pink one is the Placer One project, used to be called the Placer Ranch. And if you go way up to the upper right, that's Bickford Ranch. All of those projects are specific plans, and with them, they have development agreements. And those development agreements for large projects allow more flexibility and negotiation of what will be provided in those projects. And part of that negotiation is that each of them have developed their own fee program. So whatever we come up with this fee program, the update to our general fee program, it will probably not affect these large developments. And frankly, most of the development that will happen in Placer County over the next 20 years is going to happen within these developments. So we can be cognizant of that they have already essentially negotiated their fees with this development agreement at the time of those subdivision approvals. These are the rates that are paid today. If you're a single-family dwelling, and these are based on assumed occupancy rates that were based on the most recent census in 2004. We would update those occupancy rates to our more recent census going forward, but single-family dwelling, I believe based on 2.54 occupants per dwelling, pays $5,606 per unit. That is the combination of both the Quimby and AB 1600 portion of the fee, so that can be split and paid in 2 different times. And then we recognize multifamily secondary dwellings or mobile homes, on average, have a smaller occupancy. They pay $4,080. And then age-restricted dwellings, such as Sun City, something like that, they pay $3,503. And then again, as we talked about, if you were designated a planned development, if you make use of that planned development ordinance, then you essentially double those requirements. You either build it on site, or you get credit for portions that you build on site, and then you pay the rest of it in the way of the fee. And each of those fees are adjusted on July 1st of every year. Ted does the calculus of that fee adjustment and helps take that to the board for enacting every year. This is a sheet, also a little hard to see. We can get these to you. It's a little harder to see than I thought it would be. This is the sheet that we give to the front counter down in the Community Development Agency as they collect the fees, both the Tahoe and the Auburn office. And that just shows you, if you can see it, maybe easier behind you, how we break out the portion of the fee that's attributable to the Quimby Act and the AB 1600 Act portion collected at Land Division. You can see it's a much smaller portion collected at Land Division than the Mitigation Fee Act portion collected at building permit. Then if you have a project, say for an apartment project that doesn't have a map associated with it, they would pay their entire fee at the time of building permit.
Oh, is that messing our, oh, I got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, probably me. I drag my feet.
So with that, and I'll just draw your attention, all of those fees, since 1979, we've gone through a couple of iterations. We have funded, with the recommendation of your commission, and I don't ever remember a time the board has gone against your recommendation, we've already funded, and this is not counting the $9 million in the account now, $24 million, $24,331,180 in projects. And beyond that, those funds often have been used to leverage much more in grant projects. Probably safe to say we've approached $100 million worth of delivery, either directly funded or leveraged with this park dedication fee program over time. So this is yours to take a look at, to get an idea of the type of projects you've recommended over time. And to conclude, I think this is the last slide. I just wanted to go over where we go from here with this new fee update. So the consultant selection, Sean, I think you were out of the room, and it was mentioned that you're our project manager. You're working on it as we speak, getting that over to procurement. So that request for proposals that you have there will go to procurement. I know of at least 3 or 4 really good firms that we've worked with in the past, and hopefully they'll be interested in working with us. If we get a good proposal, that'll happen this fall. So we will select a consultant, execute a contract. Their basic duties will be, one, to write a new Nexus study, so that would replace this HAZRATH study and bring it up to date. And then two, to help us update our ordinance. I think we'd like to make the ordinance consistent between itself and to make it reflect the new Nexus study. And there's some things that we would like to consider going forward. Flexibility is one, so we have a pretty inflexible service level standard in our general plan, but as you recall from our Park and Trail Master Plan, one of the goals and values coming out of that plan is that we make a way for communities to customize what they want. So if Tahoe wants much more open space and Granite Bay wants much more fields, they shouldn't be locked into that 5 acres of active and 5 acres of passive parks. But they ought to be able, on an equity basis, 5 acres of passive parks, a lot cheaper to develop, so maybe you get a lot more open space for the same value, or you get less of it if you want more condensed but higher dollar for the square footage amenities. So we want to be able to build in that flexibility, still keep it on an equitable basis throughout the county, but build in the ability for different subdivisions to customize for their expected market. I think right now we don't have any kind of recognition of local versus regional projects. That goes back to the ability to apply fees from a broader radius to truly regional projects that benefit a bigger area versus just the local projects that benefit the neighborhood. In our service standards, the idea of open space has changed dramatically since 2004. I think, we have far, far greater with Hidden Falls, 4,000 acres, far more demand for passive recreation or open space than we do for active parks. And so we need to really right-size what the expectation is and what our real goals are for those different quantities of services that we want to provide. Is it still relevant to say 5 acres of open space, 5 acres of active park, and 1 mile of trail? Or do we right-size that with, to be consistent with our master plan that we worked on for so long? And then finally, and this is always, a little tricky, it's a back and forth. You get people like the Building Industry Association very interested in your fee program because it affects them directly. But what is the true cost of construction? We do know, because we modeled a lot of these costs with these fees I talked about with the development agreements, and they are higher. They're not scales of magnitude higher, but we do know it's higher. It's a higher price to build a park than we collect fees for today. So we do need to look at that, and we do need to bring forward the actual cost of construction. The board may ultimately elect to, fund all of their parks through this fee program, or they may elect to fund it through fees plus something else. The board will make a decision on what the appetite is for a fee increase, and that'll be part of this exercise. But we do want to really know what the full cost of development is. So just some of the things we need to consider in this new fee update.
Andy, can you touch on, I don't know really how to put it because I really don't understand it, but the state requirement mandating rezoning of parcels for maximum density, i.e. 30 units per acre. I was at the last WACMAC that they had, and they were talking about, the farthest one up was at Applegate, and they had 2 parcels, a couple of acres each, that were slated for the 30 units per acre. And I'm just wondering, you mentioned before that those will be lower income and the park fees might be waived for that. Is that something that's still going on? Or, I don't remember all of our conversations. And then the other part of it is the adequacy of the current parks that we have if we're going to increase the density of these areas.
I can only speak in generalities because there is a lot going on at the state level and the county level in what to do about the problem of affordable housing. And so there is initiatives. I'm not sure where they're all at. I know some of them are making it easier to build secondary dwellings. Some of it's making it easier to increase density. But in general, we make a decision as an agency of a service level we want to maintain. And the state may say, or the Board of Supervisors may say, we're going to waive fees to encourage affordable housing, to which we would say, we understand, but if you've also made a decision to keep up a service level and you're waiving fees, how do you backfill that? Now, the board is not oblivious to that because they already do have, at least in some cases, funding set aside for affordable housing. I know that is intended to backfill some of these fees. Sufficient amount, I don't know. As I say, I can only really speak in generalities. I know the board is aware of it, and that they know what's at stake. They've got these dual policies they're trying to encourage: affordable housing on one end, maintaining a service level standard on another. Those are all, I think, decisions for discussion as we go forward, even within the general plan. What is it going to take? We can tell you the dollar value it's going to take to keep up this service level. Board, do you have the appetite? Public, do you have the appetite to fund this from some other mechanism if you don't want to fund it from fees? That's exactly the kind of questions we need to be at the table asking. I don't know what the answer is going to be at the end of the day. But yeah, they're trying to fulfill two different legitimate public policies.
Would that be something that would be taken up and discussed and maybe even resolved in the general plan update?
Absolutely. I think it'd be very
So
much.
I guess we better be at the table.
Yeah, the recreation element into the general plan, we will be very much in tune with, yeah.
Is it worth mentioning that these fees can only be used for capital development?
For Andy, in regards to this study.
Are we supposed to read this over and then get tested next time?
Yeah.
The test is at the end of the night.
Well, it's fresh.
Is HAZRAT still around?
They are, yeah.
Are they, is that who you were interested in having do this?
They would be one of a field. I know we've had good experience with the company that works with our Granite Bay Lighting and Landscape District every year. We've had a good working relationship. One of the companies, Goodwin Consulting, has helped set up a lot of the fee programs in West Placer. So there's a number of them. I'd say we can be very open-minded. There's a good field of economic consultants out there. We'll just see which one is the most interested and responds the best.
And how long would that study take to finish?
Good question. So the first thing that happens when Sean gets the RFP over to procurement, they have a really neat spreadsheet that lays out the process of how long it'll take to get somebody under contract, and then part of the proposal will be a schedule. So we'll provide those to you as soon as we know how long will it take to get somebody under contract and how long will the process take once they're under contract.
And so part of the consideration would probably be, are these 16 areas still relevant to the future?
That's a question I think we need to ask during this process.
Yeah.
I know that you could, that there are some of these areas, there are people that live within these areas who think of those boundaries as very near and dear to them and pay very close attention to how much money is within that boundary. There are other folks who'd like to see it more flexible. So I think part of this, there's always a public process with any change in finance at a public level, and there will be a public process, and your commission will be part of that.
Gotcha. Okay, well, that sounds like something, that's a lot to chew on.
Hopefully that will get you thinking, and we really covet your ideas and input all the way through this, so appreciate it.
And this was done in '03, and the review of projects went back to, did you say 79 or 88?
Is that what it says?
Between 1979 and 2004, we only collected Quimby fees. In 2004,
see.
we began
Okay.
collecting both.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I find that pretty confusing. Okay, let's go to the next item.
We do too.
Well, I would like to add, because I live in Dutch Flat, and as you can see on our fees, we have $6,000 in the kitty, and we bring in about 5,000 a year, so one house every year, maybe. And yet, our swimming pool is kind of a regional pool, and so the last project that they did at the pool was they pulled money from the Colfax area, because we'd proven that there's enough use from the Colfax area to give us good standing to take money out of their area. I think that goes in with some of the other areas that are growing really fast, that have the money, as well as other areas that don't have the money, yet we are all part of one county with one park system, and people do use those. And I mean, I think that the expansion of the regional park idea that things, I mean, like Bear River Campground, after those town hall meetings, I talked to people after that. There are people from Sacramento, from the Bay Area, all over the state that come up here and camp there. So it was, you know, anyway, I look forward to working with us all.
You know, that is a perfect example of the kind of comments that we look for from your commission. You have your finger on the pulse of the community, you know what the goals are, the type of projects they want. So one part of this is, you know, what are the things we want to accomplish with this new fee program? Another part is going to be engage with council and the auditor's office of how to do it legally, how to get there, right? So both of those are important parts.
John, if I could. Yeah, one concern that I have, and I'm not seeing anything here that tells us what's actually going on, is how long that money has stayed in, and at what point does the county lose control of it, and it needs to go back to the folks it came from, the developers.
You know, I'm pretty certain, you know, even though I don't recall like the exact language, there's never a date where the county has to take an initiative to send it back. You know, nevertheless, and it is a little hard because it trickles in, you know, fee by fee by fee, date by date by date. We do have a spreadsheet that tracks that. We can figure out a way to give a report, but it is kind of a complex tracking.
We also, we take these fees annually. The CEO takes the initiative to take the fee program to the board, and each department that brings in these fees does a presentation of, and they have a matrix on there that shows when they brought in and how many are past the 5-year mark and what's earmarked and what isn't earmarked. We do this annually in accordance with State Code 66,000. And that kind of keeps us on track there. So we're publicly announcing, you know, where we are at with these fees, because not only parks fees are subject to this, so are your road fees, your sewer fee, all your capital improvement fees are under the same code provision. So we do an annual report.
Okay. What I would suggest is not to create any more work for your staff, Andy, is when you do that report for the county, pass that report on to us at a meeting.
Absolutely.
Very well.
Yeah, make note of that.
Okay, do we have any other questions on item 8? Hearing none, this is 9, action on 8, park dedication fee request for the Applegate Park Improvement Project. Mayor, I recommend the county board of supervisors approve the use of park dedication fees in the amount of $150,000 in rent area 14, Bear River, Applegate, for the Applegate Park Improvement Project.
Good evening, Commissioners. Ted Rell, Project Manager for Parks, here to present to you the Applegate project, where we are requesting, as you stated, $150,000 from Recreation Area 14 from the Bear River Applegate area to do the Applegate Park Improvement Project. What is the Applegate Park Improvement Project? It's basically, we're putting in a new playground. And the backstory behind that is here we have Applegate Park. It's a 2.3 acre park. Currently has a Little League baseball field, basketball court, picnic pavilion, and I believe there's a horseshoe pit in there too as well. And so if you, let me see if I get the laser working here. Look at that. Well, you can't see it on the screen. But, what's that?
An absorbent screen.
Yeah, so there's a little building you can see my little rectangle up there, and it says that used to be the Applegate Library. Little square, rectangle building with a roof on it, that's to the left of the park. And that used to be the Applegate Library. It closed in 2021 due to COVID, and they never reopened it because of staffing issues. And the property reverted back to the Applegate Civic Center Club. And when we did that, if you see the building, there's a little dirt lot just in front of it on the left. That was a little tot lot. And there's the tot lot right there. And so when we gave the property back to the Applegate Civil, what is it? Applegate, the Civic Center Club, sorry. When we deeded the property back to them, we had to remove the playground, and we got quite a few calls from the community wondering what happened to the playground and if we're ever going to build another one. So we were responding to that by putting in a playground in the park, and there's a little white rectangle call out on the right side of the screen there, and there's a little grassy knoll right in front of a picnic pavilion at the park, and that's where we're planning to place the new playground. And the reason why we located it there is, one, it's one of the few flat areas on the park that isn't on the baseball field. And it's right in front of the pavilion and just left of the grassy area where the field is, where a lot of people sit and watch the games. And it's a perfect area for parents to watch their kids while they're at the playground. And like I said, there's not very many options there, but here's a street view of it. As you're pulling into the parking lot, you can see it right in front of those bollards. So the play field is to the right, and the pavilion is straight forward, the arrow, and the playground would be in between the pavilion and those bollards in the parking lot. So we were going to go to the WACMAC yesterday and show the design of what we're proposing there, but they canceled it. So we'll get the MAC's, we don't get the recommendation anymore, but it'll be an informational item to the MAC as soon as they reconvene. But here's a concept of the park here from our vendor. It's a play area for the 5 to 12-year-old age, and one more thing I wanted to say about that, but I forgot what it was. So you've got like the modern version of the merry-go-round, a slide, some climbing areas, and the smaller age slide for the kids, I think 5 to 7 years old on the left. There's another version of it. And so currently we have $90,000 in the account because we were going to put in, I'll show you the park again. There's a walking path that goes around the baseball field, and it was native dirt originally, and it washed out, and it was very problematic. And then we were going to concrete it in. And we ran into some issues with procurement, finding a vendor to do the concrete there, because the vendor we had at the time could only do maintenance contracting with concrete, and this was a new build. And so what we did is we decided to put DG on it and compact it, and that has held up really, really well. So we're scrapping the idea of the concrete, and we're going to take the existing $90,000 and move it towards the playground. So that's why we're only requesting, the total cost of the project is $240,000, and we're requesting $150,000 more from the Area 14. And since the Bear River Campground closed, we were earmarking some of that money for the Bear River Campground. It's closed now, so we have some fees that are freed up so we can make this a reality. So if any members of the commission have any question, feel free to ask.
Are you concerned at all with Are you concerned at all with balls that are hit from the baseball field landing up into the play area?
We actually considered that. We measured it out, and with the ages that play in that Little League field, it's very, very unlikely. Not to say it's impossible, but it's plausible, just unlikely. Also want to mention too, when you're making this motion, so this is, we're asking for you to request for 150,000 from the park area. And we did not go to the MAC because they canceled the meeting. So if you want to amend your motion if we receive any negative comment from the WAC-MAC or they want us to come back with a different design or something, you can amend the motion to approve the use of the money, but we would come back for a design change. Yes. They don't approve. They don't recommend approval or disapproval. It's an information item only, but they're kind of our litmus test for whether this is a good idea or not, or whether the community or not wants it. So that's why I'm suggesting that if you wanted to amend your motion, that just our word, we would come back to the commission if it were to be redesigned.
So the MAC will give their comments.
They'll give comments, but they won't make a recommendation.
And it's up to the people in the audience, and I've been in the audience many times, and since the change of them not taking a vote, it's been, to me, on some of the issues, have been very difficult to ascertain what exactly the majority wants, because sometimes there's somebody says one thing and somebody says something else, and you go, okay, they discussed it nicely, but
Exactly.
It's
It's kind
gonna
of
be
like a
up-
litmus test for us.
it's gonna be up to us,
How
I
is it
think.
being received?
right.
But I want to tell you, from the park users that we have interacted with out there, it was very well received. Especially one of the complaints was where the playground was previously located over at the library. There's a big retaining wall between the park and the library, and the parents couldn't see their kids when they were playing there. And a lot of the parents, they're there while the other older siblings are playing baseball, and the younger ones are playing in the playground. So this seemed like a very, very good option for that.
Is there a fence around that lot?
I'm sorry?
Is there gonna be a fence around that lot?
Around the tot lot? No. No.
So there are bollards where the grass is, so it's kind of tucked in the back. They have that pavilion there, so as far as the stray balls and everything, they're gonna be hitting that pavilion before they even get to the top lot, so. They're gonna be knocking out the barbecuers before they get to the kids.
I was thinking more about the cars.
Yeah, and that's
And that's, yeah.
that's a good point, Sean, because you can see the bollard right there that offers protection from the moving traffic. And you can't see here, but the playground will be inset a little bit more into the grass.
Maybe a good thought, though. We could consider a fence just to keep it channelized in.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
We could remove those bollards and easily put in a protective fence.
And there is money built into this project we're gonna upgrade a couple other things as well around the baseball field, like the warm-up pitcher's mound has completely deteriorated, so the rubber is kind of like an island on itself, and the mound has eroded away. We're gonna fix a couple of things like that as well, that the park needs a little bit of upgrade. And we're gonna economize the construction on this, and what I mean by that is, the vendor in their quote shaved off quite a bit of money if we used our personnel to prepare the ground for them, rather than coming and doing all the grading work.
Do we have any more discussion in regards to this? Hearing none, would anybody like to make a motion to approve the $150,000 from Area 14 for this project, subject to input from the local MAC?
I'll make a motion to approve it.
I'll second that, but I don't think I need to hear what the MAC has to say. I've been to that park, and that other little tot lot was about the end of its life anyway. And so this needs to be done, and it's in a much better place than up by the library. So I'll second that motion.
Okay, so we have a second as stated, I guess? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, hearing none, motion's approved.
Just to be clear on that expectation, we do want to get to the MAC. We want them
Oh,
to be
yeah,
aware.
yeah, yeah, but-
If they, kind of agree with the concept, design and so forth, we would just compile yours, theirs, take it to the board. If they really have anything of substantive difference, we'll probably bring it back to you.
All right, sounds good.
Commissioner comments.
Boom, item 10, commissioner comments. Does anybody have anything to say?
Yeah, it was a wonderful trip today. I got an opportunity to get to know staff better and some of our, my fellow commissioners, and it's been a lot of fun. I learned a lot.
Yeah, I too enjoyed it, and I'm blown away by what's going on down here. Wow.
Yeah.
Got your hands full. There's a
I
lot of
appreciated,
people.
yeah, I appreciated the new parks, really nicely done. I saw some things there I hadn't seen before. And then the work that was done up at the Griffin Quarry, just really going in the right direction. Thank you.
Okay, I got one more quick comment. And Andy mentioned this earlier, up in Tahoe Vista with the North Tahoe PUD with the money, I think it was $400,000 that was dedicated for the rehab of the tennis courts and accessory paths, et cetera.
Yeah, it's a little over 400, I believe.
Was it
if you've got
400
on the
something?
list. 750, actually.
Well, that's a hell of a lot more. Okay, well, in any case, as you pointed out, the pavement's done for those new courts, which includes tennis and, I think, pickleball courts.
Yep.
And according to Brad Johnson, the guy who runs the place, fencing is going in, acrylic coating will be scheduled for next week, the top coat on top of the courts. And they're basically anticipating completing this in the second half of October, which means probably November 1st or Halloween. So hopefully that will happen and they'll make progress and can play in the courts before it starts snowing.
We got to see the courts today and the progress. It was the same place we did our presentation to the Conservancy, and it looks like it is eminently about to be done. Yes, they just got to
Gotcha.
finish the fence, get the coating on top of the asphalt, and we'll be there. So
Did they say
talked
what
to-
color the coating's gonna be?
He didn't, but he did say he would get us some pictures of it once it's done. I believe
Gotcha.
they even have some drone footage, some time-lapse drone footage that they can pass to us. So hopefully by our November meeting, we'll be able to show you what that looks like.
Great. Okay, does any commissioners have any other comments? Nope, hearing none.
What about our next meeting?
What, you got something to say?
Next commission?
Oh, sorry, yeah, sorry, thank you for catching my negligence. Next
That'd be
commission
November
meeting discussion.
16th. Would that be the,
What's the third Thursday of November?
yeah, it is before Thanksgiving.
Yeah, well, yeah. That's usually the fourth.
We try not to meet on Thanksgiving Day.
That's usually the fourth
That's a
Thursday.
Yeah, there's more football games.
16.
Really?
I'll be at the Bimbo Inn anyway.
Okay, so what date is that? I don't see it.
November 16th.
Thursday the 16th.
11/16, okay.
That's not bad, that's a week before Thanksgiving.
Yeah, that's well before. Okay,
I
so,
can make that.
everybody's happy? Great. Okay, what else you want to talk about? Any other comments? No?
Thank you for dinner.
All right, let's adjourn the meeting. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I will not